Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar on SmartCat Academy. I'm Vova, head of community at SmartCat, and today with us is Una Dimitrijevic. Hi Una.
Hi Vova. Hi guys.
So a lot of you already know Una from her webinars on SmartCat Academy for beginning freelance translators. And when we were thinking of what else we can come up with, we thought to make sort of an Ask Us Anything session aimed specifically at beginning freelance translators. And we thought that we want personal questions from you, where not just general ones where you will say like, how do I set up my rates and so on, but where you would describe your own experience starting out, your own problems, and Una and myself will try to attend to them and to find some piece of advice for you. So for this reason, I don't know where exactly you are watching us. You can watch us on the community website, on YouTube, on Facebook, but the best place to watch it is on Crowdcast. There should be a link. You can ask your questions anywhere. I will be monitoring them. And try asking questions specifically about your situations, and after some while we will get to them and we will hopefully help you. So Una, I know that you have this new Translators Owned Endeavor initiative, however we call it. So what is it about and how did you end up thinking about it and doing it?
Yeah, so I mean, it was really from doing the webinars with you, with SmartCat this year. I think it was a really interesting experience because it got me in touch with a lot of translators who are asking all sorts of questions, not just about the broad themes of, you know, how do I get clients, how do I market myself, but really sort of sending the occasional personal question that they had. And I've given some examples in the Ask a Question down on the left. If you click on that, you can see what sort of things people ask me during these webinars. And I realized that I didn't have time to go into answering them properly because we were doing very broad webinars that are aimed at translators of all kinds, and the questions that we're asking were often very specific to them. So just thinking about all of this led me to create a forum, basically is what I call it. I mean, it's a website called the Translators Ant. And I wanted to have a place that really newbie translators, as I call them, people who are aspiring translators, who are just starting out, a place where they could go and where they could just feel like they could ask anything that seemed very personal to them, that maybe seemed like it didn't apply to other people, about their personal situation, their feelings, their worries, their fears about going freelance. And it's true of anyone going freelance, anything. It's not just if you're a translator. I think it's scary to step out there on your own and feel like you don't have a stable income, you don't have an employer. It's up to you to get things done and to keep your business rolling. So I set up a website for that, and I've been trying to answer people's questions as best I can and as honestly as I can. And this is part of it as well. It's to continue doing something with SmartCat, that we can kind of keep communicating with people, keep doing webinars, and hopefully just give them advice on things that they're looking for, things that they're having issues with.
Exactly, yes. I remember when I was just starting out, I don't know if it's the same right now, it seemed like there's a whole industry out there with so many people in it, and those who are already well-versed, experienced, and the biggest fear for me was that I would just be a redundant part of it, because you don't know how to fit in. You just start from nowhere and you think, where do I go, what do I do? So maybe we can also start with discussing this part, like how do you actually start feeling at home in the translation business, in freelancing?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I really had the same sort of issues. Just thinking that I wasn't sure whether there was space for me, whether it was, you know, too busy as a sector already, whether I could find clients and find work. And I think that there's two things. First of all, there's figuring out what you want to translate exactly. So getting a niche sector really helps you find a space for yourself just within the industry, because you're focusing in on something that's much narrower, that's much more related to what you're interested in and what your skills are as well. So partly for me, it was getting in touch with people in the industry that I was interested in, which in my case is sort of European affairs, public and foreign policy. And on the other hand, I started to feel like there was a space for me somewhere when I got involved with online communities. And there are, a variety of online communities for translators, and it can be via Facebook. If you're, if you're a staunch Facebook user, there's many, many groups you can join, and some are even paying groups where you can actually communicate with many translators. And for me, SmartCat was that. I'm less and less on Facebook. I'm less and less an avid user of Facebook, and I enjoy being part of the community that exists on SmartCat, because you all of a sudden feel like you're part of something much more intimate than this giant and invisible bubble of the translators world. So I think that if people who are listening already, on the SmartCat forum, already coming to the webinars, then I think that luckily they've already found a little community online that they can participate in.
I guess so, yeah. I think Facebook is great to start with, because you can feel that there is actually some life going on. But if you want to go deeper, it always makes sense to visit some forum. SmartCat community is not the only forum you can use. There is also the open mic community, which also has a forum, which is great. On Facebook specifically, I can recommend the Successful Freelance Translators group by Simon. But anyway, we do have a few questions now. We can attend to them and then discuss something else. Let me see. Okay. What is your opinion on being tested by agencies? Can poor translator result in lack of confidence? Poor translation results, review results result in a lack of confidence that will affect your workflow, stress management, and general quality of services. Maybe we can also broaden this to talking in general about being reviewed, being tested, being constantly under the looking glass, and feeling defensive.
So, I mean, I know there's different opinions about agency tests, and I know that some translators refuse to do them outright. And I think there are translators who are advanced enough in their career that they can just say no to a whole lot of things and be extremely picky about who they work with. And unfortunately, most of us, and I put myself in this category as well, we can't allow ourselves to be that picky. So I won't work with agencies that I think look dodgy, that have bad reviews online, that don't communicate well. But I will work with large agencies who ask me to do a test translation, because I actually think it's a legitimate thing to ask, simply because our industry isn't particularly well regulated. It's not like, I've always said, it's not like saying you're an accountant. You need to have passed certain exams to be an accountant, and you've got certain certification. And in translation industry, anyone can call themselves a translator. So I think it's legitimate that agencies who work with many, many outsourcers actually do need to figure out a way to check quality, because someone can design an excellent CV and a beautiful website and actually be a terrible translator. And so my opinion is that if you don't have, this amazing other source of work coming in from direct clients, it's okay to do agency tests. However, I think that you should impose also your own limitations or standards or conditions when you do them. The first one is length. So make sure you're not translating pages and pages. You should be translating maybe 300 words. You shouldn't be spending more than an hour of your time on that translation, because you're likely not getting paid for it. And the second is that you should always request feedback. So, this question that's being asked was about how negative feedback impacts you badly, but I think that no feedback is worse. So if I've spent my time doing something and then the agency just simply doesn't reply, I don't think that's acceptable, because I've given them my free time. The least they can do is give me a response. And that means I will hassle them. I will contact them every week. And they usually say, oh, yeah, sorry, like, we haven't had time to do the review, like they're usually running late, it's not their priority, so I'll keep hassling them until I get an answer. And when I do get an answer, I will, ask for feedback. So I don't think that it's enough that an agency says, sorry, your translation wasn't good enough. I want to know why. And I think that it's important to get feedback because it helps you understand. If an agency says, actually, this wasn't maybe flexible enough, we thought it was too literal, then I can understand where the problem was, and I can say, okay, I had other expectations. Or if the agency says, well, actually, there were a lot of cultural aspects that you didn't comment on, that you didn't integrate into the translation, then I can realize, okay, they want me to add comments, because some agencies actually want you to put footnotes, add commentary regarding things that are going to vary due to cultural context. So for me, that's really useful. And I don't think that you should kind of take it badly or personally. I think that you need to use feedback for growth. And I get feedback all the time I ask feedback from clients for every translation. Even if they say, oh, thanks, the translation was great, I say, is there anything that you'd like to comment on? Is there anything you want to review? I'd rather them come back to me with something than come back to me with nothing. And, aside from that, it's just about self-esteem. You need to have confidence in your capabilities and in your growth as a translator, because you're going to keep getting better, and you're going to keep getting better by practicing. You've got to keep practicing translation, and by integrating the feedback that you get from other people, be they your colleagues or potential clients. That's what I think. What about you, Baba?
Yeah, well, that's of course all holds, and I do agree with all this. I want to know particularly this stress that comes from being reviewed and being rejected as well. And not all agencies provide feedback. Some of them say that we will not provide feedback in advance. So it's up to the translator to agree or not agree to this. Sometimes what I hate, it's not only about test translations, but about general feedback as well. When the clients say, no, your translation is bad, and they do not give details, any details. I heard this story when I translated a text, and I usually translate to English. That's why I feel especially vulnerable to all the negative feedback. And you might read my texts online. They are not all flawless, but that doesn't mean my translations are the same, because of course when you do a paid job, you use a much higher degree of self-control. Anyway, they said that my translation sounded like Russian English or something, Ranglish, and they refused to pay. Well, it of course hurt. What I did was I found people, native speakers, who I could ask for their opinion, and they actually confirmed that the translation was great. And afterwards, I found out that the client actually sent this translation to like 10 translators. They chose one, and perhaps they didn't want to pay the other 9 at all. So maybe nothing personal, not their fault. They just thought it was the right way to do. In the end, they did pay, but I felt not the best way. Pretty shitty. So it happens sometimes.
Yeah, I think that clients, I don't think that's acceptable. If they've asked you to do a job, if they come back to you with negative feedback, then it's up to you to work with them and maybe work with a proofreader to improve upon it. Just saying that was not good, I'm not going to pay you, is not acceptable. You're in a position as a translator that you can rework a text. It's not like someone's, built you a sculpture and then you don't like the sculpture and they've got to start from scratch. You've done most of the work. It's just about it's about polishing it up. And I'm most of my clients, most of the work I do, they're very large reports. There'll be 100-page reports. Of course, they come back to me and we rework things. Like that's a normal process for me to have, a second draft where we're going over details and we're maybe changing certain aspects, and they've probably changed the original text. And that's that for me is also part of the process of translation. And that's by no means because the initial text was not well translated or the client was unhappy, but because you're going back and forth as if you were working with an editor. You're writing a book. Your first draft of your book is not necessarily going to be, or is rarely going to be the right one. And that's the case for maybe very large translations and not for very simple documents that I'll do. In that case, it gets sent off to the agency and that's it. It doesn't come back to me. But yeah, for sure, it's something that you need to discuss with them, that this is part of the process as well, and not just accept a client who says, no, that's not good, I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah, we're now talking about a more general thing about feedback. I think it's we are kind of wandering in this discussion, but I think it's anyway it must be interesting for beginning translators to know. And I think feedback is an essential part of what translators' work is like. Some people, when they come up with their rates, per word rates or something, they do not include this part that will come when the client comes with feedback. And sometimes you have to spend quite a while discussing one word, much more so than you translate maybe a couple sentences. And you should always keep that in mind. And some translators, I've seen it myself as a customer, they have an attitude of like, I have delivered the translation and that's it. When you hire a translator who charges peanuts, you get peanuts not only because they might not be able to translate well, although that's also a factor, but even if a translator knows how to translate well, but they charge peanuts, they just don't have this internal motivation to keep on talking and discussing things. So it's on the importance of not underestimating your work and on including everything in it.
Yeah, you need to not charge a client for this extra communication separately. It needs to be part of your original price. You need to work into your time, the communication that goes with your client, the feedback, the reworking, and make that part of the original project price, so that you don't feel like really frustrated with a client who's asking a lot of you, even though that's going to happen sometimes, because some clients are just simply just more demanding than others, and you take an average.
Yeah, that's risk management. You must always
it's risk management.
And even with this unpaid job that was paid, but anyway, it was part of the risk management process to have a client every now and then that acts like a pain in the back and doesn't pay, because you will not go to the court to charge for, I don't know, $20, right? So manage this risk. Anyway, we have more questions. Before we go to them, I want everyone to know that Una has a course on SmartCat Classroom, which is a new platform where we are planning to run CPD courses for translators. And this course that Una gives is specifically aimed at freelancing translators and includes much more interaction than any webinar you can imagine. But I think Una will tell us more about it. You can see the green button in Crowdcast where you can click and see what the course is about. But Una, maybe you can tell us a few words by yourself as well.
Yeah, sure. Before we go back to the other questions. So I wanted to launch this course, again, bouncing off the webinars that we did, to provide translators with something a bit more personalized, because I think that a lot of the courses that exist online, not just for translators in general, they're courses where you sign up and you watch a load of videos and that's it. You've got pre-recorded videos. But what I wanted to do with this course was limit the number of participants. Here is going to be 10 maximum for this first edition, so that I can actually give a lot more personal feedback to each person taking part. And if you want, the way you can think of it is a mixture of webinars and coaching. So there are going to be pre-recorded presentations that people can watch whenever they want, and those are presentations are really inspired by what I did with the SmartCat webinars. They're more condensed versions with added content, but they cover these very important topics like establishing your business and setting your rates and contacting clients and creating a great CV, etc. But that's just a really kind of minor part almost. It's less than a third of what the course is going to be about for people who join up, because what I want to do is organize live webinars just with the course participants every week, and that's based on whenever they're free. So there isn't a set time for that yet. When I've got like my group, I'm going to check when they're free, and then we're going to organize little coaching webinars together so that we can talk about their personal issues each week and talk about what they've sent me each week. So the idea is to have tasks that they're going to complete is going to be, this is SmartCat classrooms, right? So it's going to be like a school. You're going to have homework, but the homework is going to be just something that's very useful to you. So your homework one week might be create a really great CV, or your next week it might be contact 100 agencies, and we're going to work really kind of concretely through these different tasks together. And I would be giving feedback separately, you know, via email, but also during the live webinars to each participant, so that we can also learn from each other. So look at each other's CVs, compare them, look at what people have done well, where they can improve. And the reason that I wanted to run it like this was because I realized myself when I watch, you know, webinars and courses, you know, I do loads of these, you know, got great courses online through things like Coursera and edX. There's all these platforms. I've watched courses and all sorts of things like international affairs and, you know, marketing and all sorts. But what I realize is that once you've got the information, it's a whole different step to move on and use it and apply it to yourself. So I might have watched a course about creating a website, but it doesn't mean that I'm actually going to have the motivation to go and do it if I don't have someone behind me telling me, this week do this, and like giving me feedback. So what I want to provide for people in this course is the motivation, because I'll be there kind of pushing them, egging them on, telling them what they need to do each week, so that by the end of these 8 weeks, which is a condensed course, they will have advanced their business more than I did in months and months, because I didn't have someone standing behind me and telling me, all right, do this, do this, do this. That is the general idea behind the course. So 3 elements: 1, the pre-recorded presentations that I'm doing; 2, the live coaching webinars with the group every week; and 3, the tasks or worksheets that people need to complete and to send me on a specific date to work on their deadlines, you know, to work on their task management and time management, and to get feedback from me every week about how they're doing. So yeah, the idea is to get people within 8 weeks launching their business, starting to contact clients and agencies. So it's really aimed at translators who are just starting out, who are just wanting to get into this and wanting to launch their business, and who are a bit hesitant to do so, because I know how scary it can be at the start. I remember myself. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Well, it would be a surprise if I didn't, but I actually do, because you also forgot to mention one part, which is teamwork and feeling part of a group. It is valuable in so many ways. To start with, you have people who you can come to if you need translations in other language pairs or specializations, who will be coming to you. And it's also about discipline, because one thing that's missing in freelancing is someone, as you said, to stand behind you and keep pushing you to do something. Because we all heard your webinar when you said that you must send 100 emails to agencies every week, right? But I wonder how many actually did send these emails, because it's it always seems like you can do this tomorrow or the day after.
You could
tomorrow.
always put it off, yeah. And also, you know what? Like we're people who like translating. We like languages, and we don't necessarily need someone to push us every day to translate, because that's the career we've chosen. The hard thing is the start. The hard thing is that part at the beginning when you don't have jobs, when you're calling yourself a translator, but you're still really just trying to figure out how to make your way in that system. And that's when you need the most motivation. It's just to actually do the stuff that you don't particularly like doing, which is, you know, writing emails and CVs to agencies and making an online profile, and all that stuff is not fun if you're not a marketing guru. So I think that's when people need the most help, actually. It's just that first boost, just starting out. And it was the hardest for me. Once the ball got rolling after about 6 months, then things were just kind of went very smoothly. I think that first part was the hardest, and I didn't have that support, and I think that I wish I had, and I'd like to provide it to other people.
Yeah. Some people also asked about the price. I think the price that you have is the price that you have to pay, not just because it must be paid, but because some things are better off when you earn them. Because if you just go to a free course where you can watch or cannot watch, can continue or can drop off, it's one thing. But if you commit yourself, you pay that price, it already becomes more valuable from this. Not only from this, but from this also. So
yeah. I mean, I've always told translators ask about setting prices a lot, and I've always said, set what you need to earn depending on how much time you're spending on something. So obviously, if these were I could just put up videos and you could watch them for free or whatever. But I'm actually just calculating how much time I think I'm going to put in to every person, how many hours I'm going to spend devoting to each participant in terms of answering their emails and doing the live webinars and, giving them feedback and proofreading their CVs. So I'm, the price of the webinar, of the course, which is $250, is a reflection of how much time I think I'm going to be investing in each participant. That is essentially it. Yeah. So hopefully, if you think it's worth it, then you will get out of it, more than you put in, for sure.
And also think of it this way, that you have 8 weeks and you will have at least 8 hours of online interactive sessions with Una and the rest of the group. So the mean price per hour is around like $30. It's actually the price that you should strive for as a translator. It's the starting price, I would say so. A whole lot of translators work for much less, I don't know, $8 per hour, and they think it's normal. But it's not the price at which you can really devote yourself to this work, unless you have, I don't know, a heritage, or how do you say that?
Inheritance, yeah.
Inheritance or something, yeah.
But I also, to be honest, wanted to make something that was more affordable for people than individual coaching sessions. That's also part of it, because if you're, as you said, you've got these eight coaching webinars. If you had 8 coaching sessions with me, it would be more expensive. So I think that for a lot of people, paying for individual coaching sessions can be daunting, and this is a way of actually reducing the price and getting that sort of personal direct feedback and direct communication.
Yeah, and actually you are getting more of it, because you get to hear other people's stories and learn from them as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in, is finding out the different people who are going to take part and meeting them and learning from each other. I think that's going to be really fun. It sounds more fun to me than just working one-on-one. It's like working with a group dynamic. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Anyway, we can get back to the questions, and we also had one addition to the previous question. Is there any actions? Ahmed says that he had a similar situation when the client didn't pay. Is there any actions to take as a freelance translator in case the client refuses paying? So,
yeah, this always, this comes up a lot in sort of translator forums online in all sorts of places. There's things you can try and do. So translators have said, if you've got, if you know a lawyer and your husband's a lawyer, or your brother-in-law, and they send a kind of firm letter, people are often kind of scared off by lawyers' letters. But actually, if you don't, if you're just not being paid $50 for something that you've done, there is very little that we as individual translators can actually do to go out there and get the money that we are owed. I know translators who have gone into that place where the people work who owe them the money because they live nearby, and they've gone to their offices, maybe with another person who kind of looks like a formal lawyer, and they've said, I've come from I don't think I would be able to do that. I don't think I would go and knock on someone's door and tell them to pay me. People try different things. I think that essentially it's very hard to do. What you need to do is, if they're a big client, like a big company, or if they're an agency, make sure you let them know that you're going to post bad reviews of them online. I think online image is important. Certainly for translation agencies, as I mentioned, I won't work with agencies who have bad reviews online on the Pros Blue Board or payment practices. And I think the important thing is essentially to try and avoid the situation where you don't get paid by doing this at the start. I've never not been paid. I've been paid late. Once I was paid slightly below what they owed me for some reason, but I've never not been paid because I'm really careful about who I work with. And the other thing is, if they're not a big agency or company, if you're talking about working with individuals, someone just contacts you by email and says, "Hi, I'm Mark, can you translate my CV or something, then those people, you should always get payment up front. Just simply ask, they need to send you a check or a bank transfer before you send them the work. That is, unfortunately, you can't turn back time, but at least for the future. You learn from your mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes many times.
You can say that it was a lesson that cost you this amount of money.
And you learn, and you just try not to repeat it. Try and be more careful.
And I would also suggest that you start with, if possible, start with smaller amounts with a new client. And as the trust builds, you can take on bigger jobs.
Yes, so I've done that with agencies as well. When an agency from the US contacted me a few years ago, they immediately wanted me to do a job that was about $800. And I just said, okay, but I have never worked with you. And I will do half, and I want to split up the payment. So I'll send you half, and once I get the payment for the first half, I'll send you the second half. And it worked out fine, and I kept working with them. But I was dubious, because it's rare that someone, that an agency especially, comes to you with such a big project right at the start. So that wasn't a problem with them. They were happy to do that, because I think they also understood that it goes both ways. Agencies can be skeptical about freelancers, and freelancers should definitely be skeptical about agencies and clients.
Yeah, you should also understand that an agency usually stands between the client and the vendor and the translator. So in case they are not paid, they have two options: either to spend their own money or to just say, sorry, the client didn't pay. And I heard stories, for instance, from SmartCat's COO, that he had to pay his own money, quite a lot of money, to cover these debts. So sometimes they're also in such a situation, but it's life.
Yeah, it's life, yeah.
Okay, we have another question.
Oh, can I answer Anna's question? I've just been looking at Anna's question.
Sorry, 1 second. Find it. You said Anna's or Nina's or what?
Anna.
Okay, yeah, I found it, yeah. Will you spell it out?
Sure. So Anna asks, I have a master's degree in languages and literature, no specific degree in translation. After graduation, I was studying translation by myself, webinar courses, working for nonprofits, friends, as a volunteer. Would this kind of work be considered by potential clients, or is it vital that I enroll for a master's degree in translation in order to be considered? So Anna, you just described me. That's exactly what I have. I have a degree in languages. So I did translation as part of my languages course, but I think that's often the case. You do like a bit of translation when you study modern languages. It certainly wasn't the main part of my degree. And I also didn't think I was very good at it at university. Other people were better at translating than I was. But I also realized later on that the kind of texts we were doing at university were far harder than anything I've ever done since. So what you'll find is that if you talk to translators in certain countries, for example, in France and Switzerland, there's big translation schools, and people who have graduated from those schools will tell you that you need a translator's degree to be a translator. You absolutely do. And it's the same as people who belong to big translators association, and who say to you, if you don't belong to a translators association like this one, then you can't be a translator, you're not serious. And people always tend to tell you that what they've done is the only way to go. And it's not true. There are great translators who don't even study languages. They are just bilingual. They live their lives across 2 countries. They have a great specialization, maybe in law or anything else. And they love what they do, and they are good at writing, and they've never studied languages, but they're great translators. And there are people who have a translation degree, and they're not that great translators because, actually they're trying to work in too many fields at once. They're translating things that they don't have a specialization in, because they think that just because they have a translation degree, it means that they can translate anything. And that's, you're not a legal translator and a financial translator and a literary translator and a translator of mechanical, like you're not everything. So by all means, if you have the time and the money and the will, and you're really interested, why not do a master's in translation? But you do not need one to be a translator. It will bring you something, and it will not bring you everything. I think that when I see sometimes what people do in certain translators courses, and be it in university or in specific schools, I think they often really lack the business side of things. They often aren't taught how to deal with the stuff we're talking about, kind of, client relations, money issues. There are some things that these courses lack. The important thing is, yes, absolutely, all of the things that you've done, that you mentioned, working as a volunteer, translating things for friends, you've worked as a translator. Just because you haven't been paid for those jobs doesn't mean you haven't done a good job. So you want to have that in your portfolio. And your portfolio, I mean, that can just be a few links on your profile to things you've done if they exist online. It can be a Word document with side-by-side comparison of texts you've translated. But of course, those are the things you put forward. And when you contact clients and agencies, you say, I've translated in this area, this area. You don't need to say, oh, and I wasn't paid for it, by the way. I mean, that's not relevant. I got into translation because I was working as a volunteer in a refugee center, and I was interpreting, and they were all volunteer interpreters. And then I started helping them out with document translation. And then I started, because I'd done that, I started working with an agency that helped legal firms who were helping refugees, and they needed legal documents that were just sort of statements, not contracts. I don't translate contracts, but statements from different people translated. So that's how I got into translation, directly from working as a volunteer translator and interpreter. All experience is valid experience, and not just in the field of translation and interpreting, but also if you've worked, I don't know, you worked 3 years as a financial assistant in some kind of office, well, then you know terminology in that field. You know how people work, you know what deadlines they're on. So all experience is going to be relevant to you. Don't worry about specific degrees. Just be confident in your skills and keep practicing. Do volunteer translations just to keep translating, because that's how you're going to get better.
Good words. It's interesting because I think there is translation as an art. People who translate books, I mean, we all can try translating books, but we are business people, basically freelancers. And what I've noticed is that the best translator is not always the best freelancer to work with, because some translators have the attitude that just don't allow to set up a harmonic relationship with them that will be interesting to both parties. I think a master's degree, what really matters is that you have something for languages. If you read a book and keep thinking how I would translate this to my language, I don't know, something like this, or keep noticing some mistakes on billboards or something, I think this also is telling about that you have what it takes to perhaps become a good translator.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is absolutely, like, I think that too many people think that just because you speak 2 languages, you can translate. That's not true either. That's the other end of the scale. Just because you speak 2 languages first of all, doesn't mean you're bilingual. Second of all, doesn't mean you have sort of the love of language and the interest and the passion that it takes to do this every day, and not necessarily always work with super interesting documents, but do it because it's like a challenge. Often for me, it's like a game, like things you have to figure out and work out what works best. And subtitling is also like that, because you have to fit it into smaller bits of text and 34 character lines and all this. But the important thing is to actually be a good writer is really key. I think if you enjoy writing, I mean, I write blogs, I've always written, I love writing and all sorts. That gives you an idea of, are you going to be a good translator? Are you a good writer? Are you skilled at using language, and do you love that? Do you have a passion for that? It's going to make you a better translator than just someone who has a degree in translation. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, actually about writing, I think now with the advances of machine translation, writing becomes more and more the key skill for a translator, because actually I don't know if you saw the DeepL machine translator. It's deepl.com.
I've heard about it, yeah, but I haven't looked at it.
Its translations are just, I don't know, I'm amazed. I wasn't so amazed when I saw Google translations, Neural and so on. I'm not advertising them. We don't even have them integrated into SmartCat yet. But anyway, so it's quite probable that in a while, computers will learn to put an almost perfectly coherent text in the target language. And what will really matter for a human is to put it this way that will affect the person reading. Because, I don't know, in 1,000 years maybe, but right now a computer will not be able to take into account the persona of the person you're writing to, who will be reading this. So if you are a good writer, if you can put it in this way to make it engaging regardless of the original text, then it gives you a strong edge against machines and other translators equally.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's still space for us humans in this industry.
Actually, yeah, I think maybe a lot of newbie translators are also interested in this part of the game. It's funny because I went to a bookstore the other day, and the guy, there was a Harry Potter book that is now sold in English in Russia, which is strange for Russia because we do not usually sell books in English like on the front door, like, advertising it and so on. And so we kept talking to this storekeeper, and he told me that there are some things that cannot be translated. For instance, he tried putting Arthur Conan Doyle into Google Translate, and it gave him complete garbage, So that's a kind of feeling that some people have about us translators. They don't have an idea that it's actually something more than putting it to Google Translate and reading it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
they don't make
I think there's sectors. There definitely, there are going to be sectors that are going to be very easy for machine translation to do because of the type of language that's involved, and there are going to be areas that are still going to be around for us to take care of for a while. And they're the most interesting areas. So honestly, I couldn't care less that machine translations are going to do, technical manuals for your Hoover. I don't.
But that's for you. But there are a lot of technical translators out there.
Of course. But the thing is that if you're starting out as a translator, hopefully, there's no 10 people who've done technical translation for the past 20 years listening to this webinar. Sorry if you are. But if you're starting out as a translator, what I mean is that you can also focus on areas that have less probability of being taken over by this field. So even if you're starting out and doing all sorts of translations and doing the occasional Hoover manual, that's fine. But you're going to want to start focusing your skills and focusing your options on areas that you find really interesting and that are going to need this kind of additional skill of human translation for a while at least. I'm not too worried anyway, not for now.
Yeah, actually, speaking of promising areas in translation, you know that the localization industry is growing because more and more content needs translated. And a lot of this content comes from companies who want to enter new markets. So if you are just starting out and do not know what to focus on, I think it's a good idea to look into these companies.
Yeah,
and you don't even need to
transcreation. I think localization and transcreation is one that's really just doesn't have anything to do with machine translation. People who work in transcreation and who do very creative text and marketing. Transcreation is mostly aimed at marketing. So if that's something that you enjoy, this kind of more creative aspect of translation, and when you have to translate slogans and translate advertising and things like that, that's an area that's going to be human dominated for a long time because it's extremely cultural. It relies on you understanding really the general culture of different countries.
Yeah, when people say transcreation, they usually imagine translating something like Nike's "Just Do It," or I don't know, McDonald's "I'm loving it." It's not only about slogans and advertising, and I don't want to call it actually transcreation, although it pays to do so because it's a buzzword anyway. But I think there are a lot of things, even a simple message put on a website, you can always make it better in the target language. If it doesn't need like thinking for 2 weeks about how to translate, just do it. For instance, today I saw this localization platform. I posted it on Facebook, and they do localizations, and they translate. Their tagline is "Translate or developers will love," and they have a Russian version, and the Russian version reads we love developers," something like this. So
Yeah.
they screwed up the very essence of what they are doing. But
Yeah.
When you're translating websites, you just need to put it this way, that the target audience in your language will love reading, because it sounds so awkward if it's put just in the same words as it is in the source language. I guess it's with many languages this way.
For sure. Should we answer another question?
Yeah, let's do.
I'll let you pick one this time.
Okay, I will choose the one with the most votes. From which point certification, I think we talked already about this, from which point certification with the Translator Association becomes important. Maybe I will just mention one more thing here, is that for a customer, your certification is kind of a guarantee. So some customers use it because they do not want to invest their own effort into assessing your abilities, and they just look at your certificate and judge by this that if you have an ATA certificate, then you must be a great translator. Some other customers give don't care, and so they just assess your own abilities.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's no point that I would say it becomes critically important unless I don't know, you find a sector, an area,
medical maybe,
who say like we absolutely require this certification. I mean, it depends on your clients. You have to find out. If they say we absolutely want this, then it might be worth getting it. However, that doesn't mean that it's worthless. And even just joining an association, for example, the one in like the official Translators Association in France, the membership, it's like quite expensive. It's about €200 a year or something, just to be a member, not to get certification or particularly, but to be a member. And the main advantage I can see to it is that you are on their database of translators. And to be honest, like when a company contacts me, and when a client contacts me and asks for something that I can't provide, like I got asked to do an interpreting thing that was on the other side of France. It was too far away from where I lived. And, you know, when they contact me and say, "Oh, Una, can you do this?" And when I say no, I have to try and give them options, because people don't know where to look for translators online, right? And often what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, you know, this is the local Translators Association. Look there, you know, those are people, and you can obviously then from there have links to their websites, etc. But it is, for me, the easiest, most surest way to recommend to clients to find other translators and interpreters that I can't vouch for personally, but that I would vouch for more than just say, you know, go onto a big platform and just search randomly. It's really hard to narrow it down that way. So I think if you're a member of an association, I think that can be very useful, because you'll find that clients will simply search for translators there. And that's the same for being court certified. That's the case in France. If you're court certified, then you're on a list of official court certified translators, and you get contacted by people to do jobs because you're on that list. So there are advantages to it. I would say at no point does it become critically important, unless you find that for some reason in your sector and where you live, that's the case.
Okay, we have around 10 minutes left. Let's go quickly for the rest. There's a question from Nina. Should a cover letter for a translation agency be different from a cover letter for a typical job opening? And it's also about resumes.
So I'm not sure what she means by typical job opening. I don't know if she means contacting direct clients, or because job openings, or maybe she means like when you have a job offer on a platform like on SmartCat, you have job offers. You're going to be, when you're writing...
Well, let's speak about translation agencies versus direct
Yeah.
clients, because I think that's a topic that could be
Yeah,
interesting.
so for me, your CV is your CV. I mean, you can have various versions of your CV, but I have a CV that I'll just send to agencies, and I don't generally send my CV to direct clients unless they ask for it. Some I contact some companies and they'll say, yeah, great, we'd like to work for you, just send us your CV as well. So they, for them, my website link wasn't enough, and that's fine, I'll send them my CV. So that's for your CV. For your cover letter, I have also a standard cover letter for agencies, but obviously you adapt it to the agency. You try and find the name of a person there. You try and, obviously, if you're working with an agency or you're trying to work with an agency that deals with a specific sector, you want to mention that. You want to say, I'd like to apply to your agency because you work with these kinds of clients, and my experience with X, Y, and Z reflects that. So obviously you're adapting it a little bit, but because you want to contact many, many, many agencies in order to get positive replies, you can't spend time writing out whole new letters for each one. You want to have templates, or a few templates, and you just adjust. And then when you're writing to, when you're responding to job boards, if you're responding to those kinds of questions, again, templates. Just have your CV is your CV. You send the same one to them as you do to agencies. Again, if you have different specializations, or if you're working as a translator and as an interpreter, or if you're working as I don't know, a legal translator and a literary translator, then you probably want two separate CVs that focus on those aspects. If you can, if you have enough experience in both, you want to split them up so that that focus is evident to clients that have that particular focus. So you can do that too. But otherwise, I personally have one CV that goes out to all of these kinds of people. And your cover letter for responding to job will be a bit more personal than the one for the agency. You might have a paragraph that's the same because you're saying, hi, this is me, this is what I translate. But then there will be another paragraph that says, I saw you needed this, by this time, this is my rate for this job. So a bit of both. I mean, a bit of both. Use templates. Try and make your job as simple as possible by having templates that you keep to the side and that you reuse, and just add the more personalized information into them whenever you can.
Okay, we're gonna do it in a blitz mode now because we have one question about certificates already answered.
Gotta give me 2 minutes to show them my website as well.
Sure.
At the end.
Let's go. No, let's do it right now.
All right, okay, go. All right, may I share my screen?
All right, then I will start asking. In the meantime, you can.
It's okay. I'm sharing. It's there. Look.
Okay.
So I just wanted you guys to see it so that you can check it out for yourselves afterwards, because a lot of some of the questions that you upvoted as well, they're on the website, so you can see the answers that I put in. So this is the platform, basically. It's called the Translators.com. You can check it out. There's information about me. You can get in touch with me. And there is links to webinars I've done with SmartCat. And this is the Q&A section that I wanted to show you, because this is basically when you write to me through Get in Touch. You can ask me questions that I keep anonymous. Like here, I just use people's initials. I don't use your whole name. And so these are my answers. So for example, like the question that we put in the Ask section, how can I handle the fear when looking for direct clients, for example, fear they can't satisfy their needs. So if you're interested, if you feel like this reflects something that you also feel, you can just continue reading and check out my answer. And I would love for you to send me your own questions. So you get in touch, put in your name, Q&A section, and then you submit the question, and I will do my best to reply and to put it up on there. And I have the courses page where you can watch the intro video to the course that I'm doing and read more about what the course is about. And if you're interested, then you can just click on the register button. It takes you to the SmartCat page. So this is the Teachable SmartCat Classrooms page, again with that information, and which allows you to enroll in the course and watch a promo video. So that's it. That's just what I wanted to show them, my website, so they can go and take a look.
Yeah, thanks. And you can also press the green button under the Crowdcast video if you want to sign up for the classroom.
Yeah, you can close them. You can close my screen now if you want. We can come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we have any more time left. Una, let us know if we have to drop it. But anyway, there were just a couple of questions. I think we can do.
Hit me, blitz questions. Go.
Yeah, blitz. I'm currently working for an agency that spent several months without sending any work. Is this common in the localization industry?
Oh man, it's common in every section. Yeah, an agency not sending you work for a few months is nothing to be surprised about, which is why you need to be in touch with many agencies. I think I'm enrolled, with a few hundred agencies, and I think that there's only a handful that actually send me work regularly, and then sometimes one or two just once or twice a year send me a project when they remember I exist. So it's normal that agencies don't contact you that often. It might be that they simply don't have work for your language combination or your sector. It might be that you're just simply not on their list of top translators. So you can also just send them the occasional email. I think it's great just every couple of months if you've got a little email update, just a nice little sort of newsletter, and say, hey guys, just to let you know, this is what I've been doing for the past few months. Like maybe these are the types of documents I've been translating. This is a course I've followed online. Like this is some professional development I've done. If you've got new skills, if you're offering something new, like maybe you've decided that you want to offer editing and you didn't do that before, you just write them, let them know. They'll remember you exist, and they will hopefully then have you kind of at the forefront of their mind next time they've got a job in your area coming up.
Great. So another part of the same question is, which is the average rate per word in this field? A very huge question, but I will answer just quickly. Anything below 5 cents per word, I think it's nonsense, just from myself. But
sure, I've never done localization, so I won't comment on localization rates. I could tell you how they differ from my translation rate. So
above this, it's very different. I mean, we had a webinar on this. You can browse our Crowdcast channel, crowdcast.io/smartcatai. It's hard to say, but you can find it. And there was a whole webinar on setting rates. And the final question: I'm currently working with a single client who is my previous employer, and I'm happy with the conditions, but I want to move into another field. I'd like to translate popular science magazines. I have no science qualifications, but I'm very knowledgeable in that field. Can you suggest how I could pitch to target clients without having science qualification?
Oh, well, I think that first you need to show them what you can do. So make yourself a portfolio of just volunteer translations. Find things you're interested in and translate them. So I think the key is to have a portfolio. Contacts is another one. So if you're interested in that industry, do you know anyone in that industry? Do you know anyone who works in publishing there? How can you make those contacts? Can you go to events? Can you link up with them on LinkedIn? Find out who those people are who work for those magazines, and write to them on LinkedIn and say, I'm a translator. I'd love to translate what you do. I think there's a demand for it. You need to justify to them why they would want it translated into whatever your language is if it's not translated already, and why they should work with you. So tell them that you're passionate and show them what you've done. That's the important thing. It doesn't matter if you've not worked, if you don't have a client in that field yet. Just keep practicing, do translations, get feedback try and find other translators who work in that field, try and get feedback from them, make sure you're providing really great quality work, and persevere. It's going to take time. Getting into new area, it's always going to take time. It's going to take months, and bit by bit, and word of mouth, it's going to spread. Good luck.
Be proactive. I think it's a slogan that can be used for the whole freelancing career. Do something in advance to build your reputation. Anyway, I think that's it. We have to cut it now, but if you have any more questions, you can ask them on the forums, and Una is on community.smartcat.ai, or you can write it on Una's website, thetranslators.com. Una is also present on our community forum, so I'm sure she will answer in both places, and other people will answer too. So I think we had an engaging discussion here, and I think we are definitely going to repeat it sometime in the future. So keep asking questions, and we will be coming back to them both online and during such webinars as this one. Thank you, Una. Any parting words if you wish?
This was super fun. So let's do an Ask Us Everything again, Vova.
Okay. Then see you. Thank you for coming, and see you next time. Have a great evening, morning, whatever you have in your time zone, and ta-ta.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.